everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Well, I have exciting show for you today. In fact, I don't even know the full extent of it, but this is it. There's a lot of stuff going around, floating around out there by what is now called the legacy media. The former mainstream media is now the legacy media, that are just lies. And so today, I wanted to bring you someone who is on the ground at the Coutts border in Alberta to give you an update on what is happening there and what is actually reality. Here's my good friend, Jarrad McCoy. Hey, Jarrad.
Hey, Lisa.
So
Yeah,
good to see you.
yeah. So you can see behind me, I'm just above the meeting place where you might have noticed it in media coverage the last couple of days. I'm just above there. Kind of discovered this spot at the last second. In behind me, you see the blockade,
Yes.
but miracles can happen. Even our lawyers said, "Good luck dropping mandates." Good luck. RCMP said that's not our call to make, all this type of thing. So it's been amazing. There's been miracle stories like, you know, waters parting kind of stories all along this journey. I've been doing Facebook Lives. Those will be fun to reflect on later. Jarrad McCoy is my name on Facebook. Go ahead and look at those if you want some behind the scenes through this whole thing. But yeah, miracles happened today. The MLAs are in support of dropping rural mandates, right? There's 30 MLAs that want to drop rural mandates. All the things we were dreaming of having lifted.
Wow. 30. That's pretty significant.
So when they drop there, obviously, city MLAs would be their constituents would probably be a little jealous, and I'm sure it's going to be a trickle effect. Um, it appears the government, we're in talks about opening up, but you know, were they really, where were they taking this? So right now, a lane in each direction is just there. You probably see trucks moving. They're actually opening it up as we speak. They've also, right before that, just right before we made that decision, we were about to go outside and make sure the traffic was super easy to get in for local residents. It's always been open the whole time, but a little bit awkward for them. But media was saying it was closed off, but residents could come and go. Much of the difficulty getting into town has been with the RCMP over the last few days, right?
So Jarrad, let me just put a pause here for one moment. For those who are listening, Jarrad McCoy is on the ground at Coutts, Alberta, which is the border between Alberta and Montana, one of the most highly trafficked borders next to Vancouver in Canada in terms of commercial trucks coming across the border. A bunch of truckers went down there in solidarity. I lost your, there you go. I lost in solidarity to express their same concern that our Ottawa truckers is that we need to drop these mandates. Now, the media has been saying things like, there's a police officer was beaten by the truckers, and these truckers were
so that story was just being clarified. I don't know if it has already on media, but it was found to be inaccurate, false information that is either a lie or misinformation. It's been proved with video footage. So that was encouraging for the MLAs to hear that that wasn't true. That was also for them to realize and see through the lies that this isn't a bunch of violent guys. It's not a bunch of guys that are just gonna next week go find another excuse to shut things down. These guys were looking for a miracle, looking for God to move. There's been unjust things happening in our society for 2 years. There's been human rights violations. There's been Charter of Rights and Freedoms violations all along. A grade fiver could read and understand the laws that have been broken in these past couple of years. It's been a media spin to justify what's, the atrocities that have been happening to people.
Mm-hmm.
So, a miracle happened. Even our amazing lawyers were not wanting the people here to put too high of expectations, but there's guys here who believe in the creative God. They believe that Jesus invented freedom. He who the sun sets free is free indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was time to swing for the fences and trust God to do a mighty work in the politicians' hearts. Give courage to the politicians. Give love to the politicians. Give courage and love to the RCMP. Give courage and love to the people here. There's some I heard there's an accident that may have happened at one of the farmer blockades, but farmers were rallying behind this. Um, there's been grassroots, even the organization of this. It wasn't hardly premeditated. It was like many people who were involved with guiding things and discussions. It was organic, grassroots.
Mm.
It just seemed like it feels like a movie, for the future.
It seems like the right thing to do, and I agree. I think it is going to be a movie, not because it's got worldwide recognition now. There's so much impact going on, and not just in Ottawa. And this is the thing: is that people need to know that all over Canada. What have you seen being on the ground there with these guys? What have you seen as a support from locals?
Well, it's been amazing. Me and my wife had yeah, sorry, I tear up sometimes when I think about how good God is. And
Okay.
so we had a little recent adventure ourselves, just moving. I grew up in this area, Milk River. I have a farm. Our family farm is, let's just call it 20 miles from here. And my cousins live in this town. My pastors live in this town. They've been unjustly shut down their bed and breakfast, getting harassment from AHS and people quote unquote doing their job, right? And the church has been, anyways, we've got to move back here in November. We've got to be involved with our local church here. We've been able to be involved with the worship. We just had faith and have been believing that we need to declare things over this area, that there's going to be some significance in us moving here. And this is, this is the type of thing I think God has brought us here for such a time as this. I can tell guys that have met here are going to be lifelong friends.
Wow.
There's guys here who passionately love God and love their families and love their neighbors. And these guys they're awesome guys. If what's happening here, it doesn't matter what nationality you are, what demographic you're from, you're going to be benefiting from freedom, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
I love.
yeah, you're going to be benefiting from these unjust laws that are being violated. We're going to benefit from our MLAs having courage. We're going to benefit from people stepping out of fear and into the freedom.
I love that. I love what you told me just yesterday, that many of these guys that have come together didn't know each other before. They just came with a common bond, a common goal, and a common desire to see Canada free again, to have their freedom, and for their children and grandchildren and the future of Canada to be restored.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, it's kind of a Hail Mary attempt. Not that we're doing Hail Marys necessarily, but the old saying.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's kind of the last stand.
yeah, and there's been little mini
Victories.
battles along the way, um, you know, and just kind of near miss situations and stuff like that, and just to see, the team of ordinary people that God assembled to do do what the professionals couldn't make happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it did. Some people were taking a risk parking where they parked, I guess you could say. And it was, they're risking losing friends. But a lot of people have lost friends this last 2 years because their views weren't um, politically correct, or their views were quote unquote not the religion
Acceptable
of
views.
science. Yeah, the religion of science that they'd been pushing, the
Yeah.
version of science that or the accepted version of science.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, a lot of people have had family members that have suffered needlessly
Mm-hmm.
because of these unjust laws that were happening. And we recognize it was the enemy attempting to steal, kill, and destroy. And now we're recognizing God working through people to, yeah, set the captives free.
What do you say to people? Because there's a whole camp of, there's a few questions I want to ask you before I let you go. Is that there's a whole camp of believers who feel that it's actually not right for them to stand up like you and many of those who are there today, the truckers who are believers, to take a stand like this and violate a law of the land.
Well, that Romans 13 context, I uh, I find that interesting scripture when you look at that. It says when you obey the leaders of your land, you will have peace, right,
Mm,
and safety. So also our country and our governing system is set up that you, Watcher, me, Lisa, we're actually in charge of our
mhm.
politicians. We're we're the authorities in our land. We get to decide on who represents us. The politicians, the public servants
Yeah.
are not supposed to be our dictators. We didn't sign up for that in this society. So in Roman society, in the context of those writings, it was a little different. Um, so if we wanted to abdicate and become like the Roman society and um, hand away our rights, well, I guess I think we got a good thing going. I don't think um, the people in the Old Testament wanted a ruler like the nations around them. God
Mhm.
didn't intend us to be ruled over and dictated to, but that's what Paul found himself in that situation in Romans.
Exactly.
So that scripture, I believe, it's a whole nother topic, but I think um, you're worse than an unbeliever. Scripture says if you don't take care of your family,
It's so
and so
true.
I think men here today, they weren't worried about being worse, but
Mm.
you know, I think the Bible commends us as men who are strong, or women who are strong, to protect the weak,
Yeah.
protect the vulnerable, those who can't help. And
Yeah.
God has provided a way for some average Joes, from some truckers, some carpenters, some there's a real estate agent, just regular guys, to be involved in um, something that our paid professionals couldn't figure out for us.
Well, isn't that
We
the
understand.
gospel? Isn't that the gospel? God took a bunch of ragtag disciples, fishermen, and other people to turn the
Yeah,
world upside down.
yeah, and God can definitely relate to the average Joe. Jesus was a carpenter, right?
Exactly.
And
And
yeah,
not to
and
mention
he,
that, oh, go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna ramble. Go ahead.
I was going to say, not to mention, Jesus himself went against some laws of the land that were unjust. It wasn't about just obeying every law that's put out there, because there's laws that are unjust,
Oh,
that
yeah,
actually violate the person, and remove that human compassion, and also recognizing that freedom is given by God, and when there's a violation of that freedom, then we need to obey the authority of the land, which is God himself.
yeah. And that's even what our Charter of Rights and Freedom says. That's
Exactly.
what the Nuremberg Code says. Those laws ought to and should override emergency mandates that they, because of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and our law of the land, which is the law of our land, say if you take away those freedoms, it has to be justifiable and demonstrable.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been able to justify or demonstrate. They've just been able to keep them going because of fear.
Exactly.
And so the one thing I also have noticed, and I couldn't fall asleep last night, I'd just be thinking about situation and just, seeing
Yeah.
God move and part in the Red Sea moments and basically saying, Pharaoh, let my people go, the guys here, right? And we, praying for the heart of our
Mm-hmm.
leaders, right?
Yeah.
And I think God's softening people's heart. There's a lot of pride maybe on the line too for some people, but I think they're willing to let that go. And now's the time. If not now, when? If
Yeah.
not us, who? Right?
Exactly.
And we see from history people complied their way onto the Jews ended up complying their way onto um, the camps, the trains that
Nice.
headed to
Mm-hmm.
Auschwitz.
Yeah.
The German citizens complied their way they complied to hate. Not all of them, but some of them complied with hate, and
Yeah.
they ended up being the ones putting their fellow citizens on those trains. So compliance, though it may sound virtuous, often it's a coward's way out.
Well said. Well said. And we see that even with what's happening with the response from the government, there is cowardice. The true colors are shown. They're intimidated by the fact that Canadians are rising up and standing strong in their convictions in a way that's not violent, that's not that destroying people. It's actually in a way that's peace loving, family oriented, trusting God, and say, nope, we are holding the line. This is our country, and we are not going to let it be taken from us. I love it. I love it. I love it. And this is
You
what's
see the trucks rolling?
yes. Okay, so this
Yeah.
is my other question. Are they moving away completely now from the border?
Well, we're also dealing with some career politicians here, right?
Yes.
So our MLAs have good intent. We're trusting their intent. We were actually planning on doing. We had just decided in a meeting that let's make it obvious and make the path even clearer because there's this balance between being so clear that they can just waltz in and you know they would have a huge logistical nightmare if they would have hauled people off in handcuffs. It would have taken them probably a week to get the border open from
Oh,
hauling things
yeah.
out. This was the best way for everyone.
Sure.
Sorry, I was rambling. What was the question
No,
again?
so the question is this, is even though, because we see this flip-flop, we've seen this over the last 2 years, right?
Oh yeah.
And
So
so,
so
yeah.
the reason a lane from both sides is opening up is because these MLAs, these 30 rural MLAs, are going into their meeting at 2 o'clock, right?
Mhm.
And if they recant or Charles Schwab or whatever gets involved on
Klaus Schwab.
trying
Yeah.
to Carl Schwab, whatever. If some of those guys end up, having a bunch of MLAs all of a sudden, are depressed about living and,
Yeah.
and don't follow through
Yeah.
because of some, coincidences, then it's pretty easy for them to pull some big iron up and block the lane again.
Right. So
So
they've got a strategy.
everyone's in a posture of cooperation and hope and expectation of people doing the right thing, people operating outside of fear,
Mhm.
and people operating with courage, wisdom from God. And I think love and courage and wisdom is going to prevail. I'm believing. We've seen, it's been such a cool adventure to be here the last few days. I think, everyone, so worst case scenario for a lot of people was to get charged with a major traffic violation. I haven't done anything wrong. Like my
Yeah.
truck's not out there. I had less to lose than a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
I've been working for a few days, lost some sleep, missed my kids. I got the most beautiful woman waiting at home, waiting for
Mhm.
this update. Hopefully she watched my
She's
last live.
on. She's on watching right now. She's
Oh yeah.
re-quoted. Here's what she re-quoted. This nice saying you just said. Look, compliance, although it may sound virtuous, is often a coward's way out. I love it.
Hey, isn't that my quote, honey?
That's right. She just put it out up there.
Okay.
She just
Okay.
repeated what you just said. And Fred
Nice,
Penner,
nice.
I don't know if this is your real name, but yes, this is actually live. This is
Yes.
not a rebroadcast. This is what's happening right now at Coutts as Jarrad has given us an update of God just moving miracles. At the same time, they are holding the line and waiting for the follow through of what these MLAs have said. And same thing in other, the premier.
It's
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, it's the rural MLAs are planning on voting to have the rural areas. It's a stroke of a pen situation. They don't have to wait for, you know, the whole caucus, however, 100 and some people to agree with them. They can decide for their ridings.
awesome.
And they sounds like there's unison. We worked with local townspeople with those conversations and that communication. It's, we had like an 11 to 59 kind of moment. um all through this weekend there's moments where, there's always, yeah, there's SWAT teams driving around. There's like locals trying to warn SWAT teams coming,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of temptation to fear, but um and there's moments where God seemed to really come through when people were starting to get a bit discouraged, where all of a sudden a bunch of people came through. It's pretty neat. People snuck through the barricades with vehicles, and a whole bunch of, a couple tractors snuck through barricade. There's a little disinfo that they smashed through,
Yeah.
but there's an opening and they snuck through, and a bunch of vehicles followed. That happened a couple times.
Mhm.
Um, there may have been a fender bender on one of those times, like, so, it's
Happens.
real life was happening. Unfortunately, I heard there's an accident near Lethbridge. um Need to be praying. There might be serious injuries. Be praying for that family, be praying for whoever's involved in that. um that, there's always a reason to finger point. um After this, there might be reasons to finger point or to people to try and blame for this or that. But
Mhm.
ultimately, we got to be forgiving to the people. A lot of people were living in fear, and we
Yeah.
got to love our neighbors out of this. Love people who we may feel didn't treat us right, or maybe ask for forgiveness for people we didn't treat right
Mhm.
through the last couple of years.
Yes, and I think this is it. Really keeping in focus the bigger picture. Nothing unites people more than fighting a common enemy. And the government is not our enemy, but we know what's behind what the decision making is, and that is our enemy. The enemy of our soul, the enemy of the God that we serve, and the enemy that does not want Canada to fulfill its destiny. And look at that. Look at that. I love you guys down there. Any last words that you want to share with our listeners? We've got some great comments on here, people watching. Definitely share this with your friends. Let them know what's happening and to keep holding the line. What's your final words, Jarrad?
I'm just a carpenter with a hot wife and some beautiful kids. I've did my first FaceTime lives. So if you kind of want to see some of the journey over this weekend, and I'll keep doing them. But first time I ever tried FaceTime live was a couple of days ago. And anyways, it's kind of rough, some of them, but you can kind of get the gist of, how God was using some, uh, what I think are heroes. In my view, they're heroes. Um,
Absolutely.
these guys, I'm just so excited. So I guess, I don't
Thank
know.
you.
It might even be sketchy sharing some of the news, but I think I've been able. it's just been miracles, the conversations I've got to be a part of, the favor I've had, how we got to bring God into the conversations with the whole group, how we got to pray for the type of prayer we were talking about, where God give courage and direction. We've been praying as a group, even though these aren't necessary. We're not all, church guys every Sunday, right? But there's a lot of unity in wanting God's help. There's a lot of unity in wanting God's plan. And we weren't being super specific on how it would shape up, but I see God all over most aspects of this.
There you go. Someone said, "Thank you, Jarrad. You're a hero."
So someone suggested you share it with your others, or
Exactly.
we've had Rebel News here. We have Rebel News lawyers helping any potential fallout for some of these guys that were involved, in the civil disobedience. They have, if there was civil disobedience, right? We've got, that was a miracle getting those guys involved. Western Standard has been covering this and been wonderful to work with. And we just didn't, I've seen good things with brothers. So maybe Lisa, you can share that.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I can definitely do that. Thank you, Jarrad. Thank you so much for your commitment and your stand for truth and for freedom. We, as fellow Albertans and fellow Canadians, thank you. And please send that off to all the other truckers there, all those who are standing, that Canada says thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone.
awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, love you guys.
Love you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you share this video far and wide and really encourage your fellow Canadians to keep standing the line and keep standing for truth. It is making an impact. And we are in this together for all Canadians to end all mandates so that Canada becomes a place where our children can run and play without fear and continue in freedom. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.